Bonjour. Good morning. We are presenting on behalf of the Green Party of Canada Parliamentary Caucus. Je m'appelle Elizabeth May. Je suis le député de Saint-Gilles-de-Golfe. Avec moi aujourd'hui, nous avons Mike Morrice, évidemment de Kuttner Centre, et notre chef, Dr. Amita Kuttner. Et je vais commencer avec quelques mots parce que nous sommes sur le territoire du peuple et la nation algonquin. Et à eux, nous disons miigwech. I'm going to present briefly on the priorities as I see them going into this session of Parliament. And I have to say, I know everybody likes 3 points: climate, climate, climate. The most recent scientific study that made me sit back and once again wonder, can we get through this? Are we serious as a species that we'd like to keep living on this planet? Is the most recent paper from Science. It was published last week. It was carried on most of your networks, but it wasn't necessarily totally clear that exceeding 1.5 degrees global warming could trigger multiple climate tipping points. That's the title of this paper. Nous avons une nouvelle étude prévient que la planète atteint actuellement 9 points de basculement critique, dont 2 au Canada, qui entraîneront des dommages majeurs et irréversibles. Ça, c'est la chose la plus importante d'idée de basculement critique. In English, we talk about tipping points. I don't think anybody in the Liberal cabinet has read this paper. I don't even know that Environment Canada understands the extent of the climate emergency. One of those tipping points identified globally now is the Labrador Current. I'll just say we've talked about the Labrador Current last session of Parliament when another paper in Nature identified that the Gulf of St. Lawrence, which is Canada's most productive marine ecosystem, was already experiencing a loss of oxygen and increasing acidification. Why? Because the Labrador Current is slowing down. I can get into more of the science. The point is clear. We cannot continue to pretend that a fossil fuel industry, and particularly growing a fossil fuel industry, with decisions like Bay du Nord and completing the Trans Mountain Pipeline and increasing fracking, is at all consistent with our survival. Not talking about whether we hit political targets, talking about whether the human civilization, which has allowed Canada to flourish, and the healthy biosphere can continue in the face of a commitment to grow our fossil fuel emissions. I'm also very committed to seeing the passage of my private member's bill, Bill 226, to confront environmental racism and put in place programs for climate and environmental justice. I now je donne la parole à mon collègue, Mike Morrice.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you all for being here this morning. It's nice to see you, and those of you that are on Zoom, thank you for joining us. My name is Mike Morrice. I'm the MP for Kuttner Centre. Similar to Elizabeth, climate for both of us will be a continued focus throughout this fall session at a time when we know we're expecting the second part of the Budget Implementation Act, for example, and the #1 budget in the emissions reduction plan is another fossil fuel subsidy. This time up to $8.6 billion in a new tax credit for so-called carbon capture and storage, which we've heard, and again this summer, more climate scientists made clear carbon capture is not a climate solution. A recent study showed of the 40 times it was attempted, 32 of those emissions went up. When we know we've got proven climate solutions across the country when it comes to retrofitting folks' homes, renewable energy, and shifting to electrification of our fleets. Secondly, was really glad to see the debate finally begin on Bill C-22. I will be continuing to advocate for justice for people with disabilities. Unfortunately, the text of that bill is the exact same text as we saw in June of 2021. This is now a promise that was made up to 7 years ago. There's talk that things are being delayed because negotiations need to be had with the provinces, and yet there's no evidence being put forward that those negotiations have even begun yet. And so I think it's critical for all parliamentarians to work together to push this governing party to demonstrate that it is serious, not just about using the right words, but about delivering the supports that the disability community has been calling out for. We all took a summer recess, poverty did not. And it's critical that parliamentarians move forward, not just on the legislation of C-22, but improving the bill and ensuring we get funding, whether it's a commitment in the fall economic statement or in the budget, and recognizing that emergency supports are also required. Finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't also mention the critical need for us to address the twin crises of housing affordability and homelessness. Specifically, we need to ensure we don't just talk about supply and demand, that this isn't the market that it was a generation prior, where my parents, for example, were competing with other people for housing. Instead, young people and low-income folks aren't competing with other people, they're competing with institutional investors, pension funds and real estate investment trusts that have preferential tax treatment and who should be investing in the stock market and instead are making large returns on the backs of low-income folks in Kitchener and across the country. It's critical that we be honest about what is required to push back and reorient the housing market to one where homes should be places that people live and not commodities for investors to trade. I'll now pass it to the interim leader of the Green Party of Canada, Dr. Amita Kuttner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everyone, for being here as well. I'm just thrilled, as usual, to be able to be here to support our two MPs in their work. I just spent many months traveling the country, meeting Canadians everywhere, the wonderful people who live on these lands, and I have heard what it is that they're struggling with right now. And I know that our MPs are here fighting for everything that people need. And what I heard from people is that everyone is worried about the basics again. Les Canadiens et les Canadiennes sont inquiets. L'accès à la nourriture, à l'eau, logement, soins de santé ne sont plus garantis dans ce pays. The basics of life are no longer guaranteed for Canadians. And what I see and what we discussed is that the same causes of these crises that everyone faces day to day are the causes of the climate crisis that we are here to confront. And so what we need right now is not what we're getting. What we get all the time are these smaller solutions, temporary solutions. Ce sont des petites choses pour nous aider dans ce moment, mais pas pour notre avenir. What we need are transformational solutions for our economy. Simple ones. We need a basic income, and we need it now. We need a genuine progress indicator instead of only following GDP. And we need localized circular economy. We've seen and we continue to struggle with inflation. And the climate crisis, escalating global conflicts are going to leave us with this problem, even if it ameliorates for a few moments here and there. And what this calls for is not supports that only help some people, but a real look at how we become self-sufficient for the future. So that is really it for this moment for Canadians. It is access to the basics. And the solutions, though we're happy they get presented, will not provide for everyone. And so we are here as Greens to fight for everyone who is not currently being provided for and to make sure we face the climate crisis at the same time as co-solving everything else that comes with it. Merci.
We're ready for questions? Yep. Okay, we'll start with questions in the room. There is it. Valérie?
Bonjour, Valérie, Radio-Canada. Je sais qu'on va se rencontrer plus tard, mais je vais quand même vous poser des questions. Dans un contexte où on a beaucoup parlé de vous pour toutes sortes de raisons, sauf vos politiques environnementales, comment est-ce que vous allez faire pour vous assurer que votre message, par exemple celui d'aujourd'hui, soit reçu comparé à tout ce qui se passe depuis plusieurs semaines?
Bon, nous sommes ici seulement pour parler sur nos politiques, sur notre travail dans la Chambre. Et c'est toujours comme ça. Les problèmes du parti vont être réglés quelque part d'autre. Mais aujourd'hui et toujours, nous sommes ici pour travailler pour les Canadiens et les Canadiennes.
Et bon, vous êtes deux, ils sont deux à la Chambre des communes. Vous avez, encore une fois, de la manière à laquelle on peut s'attendre, parler de le climat. Mais on entend parler d'inflation. Vous faites quoi pour faire entendre votre message?
Bon, je pense que l'inflation et le climat sont, dans ce cas, aussi le même problème. Parce qu'on voit, et j'ai dit, les mêmes causes sont là pour les deux problèmes. Et on voit que les changements avec le climat nous allons voir les changements du climat que l'inflation va continuer. Et je pense que si on regarde les vraies causes de ces problèmes, si on regarde notre économie d'une façon dont on peut vraiment provisionner tout le monde, ça va aider de changer notre économie des gaz et oléoducs, choses comme ça, les grands projets, à la même temps soutenir tout le monde. Et je pense que ça, c'est la seule chose qui est importante, mais ce n'est pas des problèmes séparés.
Hi, good morning. David Thurton, CBC News. My question's for Elizabeth May. Madam May, did you reach out to federal councillors directly or indirectly and tell them not to vote to suspend the leadership race?
No.
Would you mind providing a complete sentence, a response to that answer?
That was a complete sentence. Your question was, did I reach out directly or indirectly to influence federal council? No, I did not.
Okay. Well, there was a staffer in one of your MP's offices that said that you did. So is that staffer not telling the truth?
I'm sorry, I don't know. I will not take a statement that someone is telling the truth or not telling the truth about something that's a hypothetical in your sentence. I'm not aware of anyone claiming that I reached out directly or indirectly, and I don't like calling, I would not ever use the term not telling the truth about a hypothetical statement that I don't think exists.
Okay. My question, can I ask another question? Yeah. Okay, thank you. What is the future of the leadership contest? We're hearing that several people on the leadership committee have resigned, and it no longer has quorum. What is the future of this race? Dr. Kuttner, do you mind responding? I don't know if you have the answer to that.
We will publish more details once they are available, but for now the race is continuing. And for today, I will take any questions like this, but because we're here on caucus business, I will ask that you not ask Elizabeth any questions about running for leader.
Okay. And so, well, I mean, it's an open press conference. We could.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to ask those questions, Mike and I will leave first and then after. So, as in, would you please finish any questions for us generally, and then if you wish to address Elizabeth about other things, then we will leave.
Okay, that's it for my questions then.
Okay.
And this concludes the press conference. There's no further questions. Ceci met fin à la conférence de presse. Merci.
No, it's up to the press gallery. I didn't book the theater.
Well, we did close the press conference. Are we still online?
I'm still online.
Okay, well, I just don't want the other side.
I didn't see anyone online anyway.
Call them. It's just because they're the 9:30, so they're really waiting to switch the lines.
Okay.
Okay, I'll just ask it really quickly.
Okay. I just want to everyone, I want to make it clear that when we hold a caucus press conference and we have our leader here, our leader is required by the rules of the leadership contest not to show any preference between and among candidates. It would be very inappropriate for me to have a press conference to answer any question, which I'm perfectly happy to answer, about the leadership race, but neither Mike Morrice nor Amita Kuttner should be involved in any questions relating to leadership other than those that Amita Kuttner uniquely knows about as our leader.
Okay, so are you aware that several people have resigned from the leadership contest, and what are your thoughts about that?
I'm aware that some volunteers are staying with the party, working really hard on other aspects of it. As far as I know, none of those personal decisions to step back have any impact on the leadership race.
Okay. Would you be in favor of having maybe a skinnier leadership race in terms of not having several rounds of voting? Because it sounds like the leadership committee doesn't have enough quorum, enough volunteers to
We
meet.
have staff in the Green Party of Canada, and we have additional volunteers in the Green Party of Canada. I'm unaware of any reason. I think the race is, we have 6 candidates who've gone to great lengths to put themselves through vetting through the course of the summer. Some people within the leadership race actually gave up other employment in order to run, which is what I did in 2006. I had to stop being executive director of Sierra Club of Canada to even take out a membership in the Green Party. That's the case for at least 2 of the candidates. So in fairness to everyone concerned, since there's no reason to not have the race continue, I don't, I've not had that question before, David. I haven't turned my mind to it. Should we change it? I don't know why. We should have debates starting. People should be able to focus on the race, focus on the candidates. There are a lot of very strong candidates. I certainly hope that the co-leadership model that Jonathan Pegnaud and I are advocating will be accepted by our membership. That's a multi-step process. In the meantime, I would hope that every single one of the candidates running for leadership this time, unlike the last leadership race where there wasn't a team at the end of it, my hope, and I think I feel very confident in this, that the 6 people who are currently running against each other for leadership, quite unlike what just happened in the Conservative Party, that we'll pull together and make sure that every single one of those candidates for leadership is elected so that we have a much larger caucus. And that, I think, that unity and that willingness to work together is almost unique to the Green Party in terms of a leadership contest.
And just my final question, because I think we have to go. Would you, just knowing what we know now, that the committee doesn't have quorum?
I don't know that.
That there aren't enough volunteers.
I don't know that.
Can you still run the caliber of the leadership race that members require or need to make an informed decision about who should lead the party?
Absolutely. I was in a leadership race in 2006 when we had less resources, fewer people, and we ran a very credible campaign and a leadership contest with a debate in English in Calgary, a debate in French in Montreal, and several bilingual debates in Ottawa. It was completely credible. There wasn't a leadership contest committee created. There was no, it was just run by council and staff. We certainly have council and staff. And I don't know the answer to the question about quorum. I honestly don't know if that's the case, so I'm not hedging. I just don't know. But there's no reason to consider that we won't run a credible leadership contest. I haven't heard from any other leadership contestants that they want anything other than to continue under the rules that were published, under which we were vetted and approved as candidates.
Thank you so much, Madam May.
And this concludes the press conference.
Merci beaucoup.
Bonjour.